My name is Ronnie Cruz, and this is Path of the Network Marketer.
All right, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about living life on autopilot. That's right, autopilot. This has been on my mind recently, and it's not so much in the context of, I feel like everybody's living on autopilot and that, making this judgment that the world consists of mostly drones. It's not that conversation. I know everybody's doing their best and are individually having to face their own level of different challenges and joys and successes and that whole gamut of human experience. I want to talk about autopilot in the sense that it's an easy thing to default to, right? It really is. It really is. As individuals, especially if you're a listener of this show and if you're a viewer of this show, if you watch the video version, you're generally, an achiever. You're going after goals and things that you're trying to create a life on purpose. And given that, I'm sure you've always faced the challenge and will continually face the challenge of hitting roadblocks, hitting hurdles along the way, maybe even hitting dead ends and having to backtrack and find new paths. These challenges these challenges and these difficulties can sometimes convince us into defaulting to autopilot. Because obviously that's the easier option. It's the easier choice. And autopilot, we can do that. We can default to autopilot because generally speaking, there's a system there that can catch us, right? There's a system there that's been put together, a structure that's been put together by society and by human advancement. Just the structure of human connection and community creates systems that allows the lowest common denominator to be able to survive. Generally speaking, of course, right? Systems, of course, have levels of inequalities and marginalized citizens. However, generally speaking, the inception or the idea of these structures are meant to take care of everybody, and so it's easy to default to autopilot because you have a system to fall back on. I want you to be aware of this because this is something that will repeatedly and continually, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm at a loss for words right now. It can continually tempt you, right? There you go. Tempt you from straying or turning away and giving up on your course, right? On your quest for a new life, on your quest to achieve these new goals, on your quest to, create the vision that you want to create of your life. The default is an easy thing to really be swayed by. It's really, the autopilot is a really, really tempting thing to default to because it's like, man, why don't I just default to this? It can take care of me. It's easier. It makes a lot of decisions for me, as opposed to why struggle and face all these things, these challenges and these difficulties when I could just live by default, when I can just live on autopilot. I can't answer that for you. I feel like for me personally, that kind of existence would be much less fulfilling than struggling and working towards an ideal and a vision that I create for myself, as opposed to, living a life by default and autopilot. Like, what's the fulfillment in that? Especially for the fact that because it's autopilot and because it's default, the results and the outcomes that you'll get in that life experience, I feel like are relegated to those autopilot settings, those default settings. If you want more than that, if you want outcomes and results outside of what you can get from living life on autopilot and on default, then you have to face those struggles. You have to face those challenges because that's the only way to get to those visions and to get to those goals and to get to those outcomes that aren't available to the lowest common denominator, that aren't available with the structures and the systems that are in place. And I wanted to point this out because I wanted to raise your level of awareness of the narratives that might be going on in your mind that want to convince you to default back to autopilot mode. I'm having a hard time saying that. This is a really bad topic to pick, but it's an important topic. There's going to be a lot of narrative and a lot of voices, and that will, in your mind, that will tell you, and maybe even externally, that will tell you to default back to autopilot. And so to raise your awareness of this is to allow you to respond accordingly, so that you can continue pursuing the life that you actually want to pursue, the life that you actually want to live for yourself. I mean, that's the only thing we have, right? That's the time that we have on this planet and in this life. So we might as well create the one that we want, as opposed to settling for one that was by default. So that's my message for today. Hopefully that makes sense. And I talk a little bit more in depth about this in our Facebook community, facebook.com/group/Path of the Network Marketer. I did a live on this just recently, just before I recorded this episode. So go check that out. I'll leave the link in the show notes of this episode. But I think it's an important topic, because we can easily be tempted and swayed into settling and defaulting to autopilot. And I want you to be aware of when that happens, so that you can say, no, I'm going to keep persevering through these challenges, so that I can live the life that I deserve and that I want to live. All right. So that's my message for today. Hope that makes sense. If not, more from me tomorrow. So until then, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.